So I'm Samuel Boudet. I'm from University from France. I am a lecturer in biomedical signal processing, and I am going to present you methods we developed to recognize maternal heart rate and more generally false signals from FHR recordings. So you all know that the Doppler channels may be contaminated, capture of maternal heart rate instead of fetal heart rate. So we'll start with a small exercise. So are you able to say in this recording of the second stage of delivery, when is the true FHR and where is the false FHR? Yeah.
After 45 is mostly maternal, but it could be half maternal, half fetal.
Oh, very good. We recognize the experts, but
well, don't pick me next time.
Without the maternal heart rate, it's kind of complicated, but fortunately, since for some years, there is now the maternal heart rate which is recorded with another sensors, and we can see if they match. But as you can see, there is 12-second delays, particularly on Philips monitor, but I guess it's for every CTG monitors. And it is very important to compensate bit to cancel this delay to really see that the two signals match perfectly. And if there is some manufacturer in the room, I highly suggest to make a small button to.
Well, we don't have that delay. I don't think so.
You don't have.
No?
Maybe it's only for Philips as well, but no, it's removed. This is what we have on the paper and on the Philips.
We don't have that.
So I think it's good to not have that because really it's complicated to see the match without. So when you have a very good solution, there is indeed mostly maternal heart rate, and there is some parts of fetal one, and we see that correspondence is not exact. So we can say that it is most likely true FHR. This is marks. This is also some MHR values. And just at the top, not tall enough, there is a small part which is in fact the harmonics of the fetal heart rate, which is 2 times the fetal, which is due to the autocorrelation algorithm used in CTG monitor to compute the heart rate. So if you don't believe me or Antonia, this is a particular recording because we have the scalp ECG which was recording in the same time, so we can see that where the true FHR and where is it. So this small exercise have to aim to show how the signal have to be analyzed to recognize maternal heart rate, and to show you that clearly it's not an easy task, and AR which have to do that have to compute several features to recognize. I guess Antonia have recognized also that there is maternal acceleration, which are often much larger than the FHR acceleration, and there is perfectly synchronized with uterine contraction, and there is also the 3 bumps on the top, which correspond to the 3 expulsive push, which can be recognized and is very typical for maternal heart rate. So our aims was to create an intelligent model to detect the small signals into the Doppler channel. There is several applications. The first one is to use as a pre-processing for further analysis, for example, to get the baseline and the acceleration, and then to predict sequences. The second application is to make an alert system, an accurate alert system with not too much alarm and every alarm as possible. For example, most CTG monitors make alarms when the MHR, the maternal heart rate, crosses the fetal heart rate. But for example, if there is no maternal heart rate, there is no alarm, and if the signal coincides, there is a lot of false alarms, so it would be better to have a smarter system. And at last, we could avoid some error of interpretation, which could cause several damage. So, how important is the problem in the current clinical routine? In France, we use the Melchior classification for the second stage of delivery, which consisted in divided in 4 possible patterns. And this was proposed a long time ago, before there was the MHR sensors. And we can see that they have done the mistake to introduce the pattern to the class 3, which corresponded, as the author thought, to FHR bradycardia with acceleration synchronized with contraction, which represented 4% of deliveries. And the recommendation was that the delivery should not last more than 15 minutes. And actually, all this pattern does not correspond to FHR, and most of the time it's maternal heart rate. So we could estimate maybe that there is 4% of delivery on which we think we measure FHR, and in fact we have a maternal heart rate instead. So we have made data sets for this problem. This is decomposed like this. We have a training and validation with an important number of recordings. So both of them, it's 800, 700, and for 40 minutes on average. We have done 2 test data sets. One for estimated what is the performance in routine clinical practice, and a second data set with dual signals, that is to say we have the scalp ECG in the same time as the Doppler, which enable us to make a solid ground truth. And we use this second data set to make a comparison of performance with the 2 experts to know if the method is better than experts. Interfering for example. There is also some dual signals periods in the training and the validation dataset in order to have a better ground truth and to hope to have data which are better than human possible annotation. We have made a MATLAB interface to annotate the recordings. So we can select the period of true FHR and period of false FHR. And when we don't select anything, it means either we have doubt or this is not interesting. And we can annotate both the fetal heart rate and the maternal heart rate channels. So because, for example, there is small samples of false maternal heart rate, which is less common, but if you don't detect that, you may make some error after for the fetal heart rate. We realized data augmentation. This was pretty much easy for this problem because we can take good signals with almost no noise, and we can add some missing periods, missing signal period, and some false signals period by taking the maternal heart rate value or taking the harmonic of the fetal heart rate. We also multiply the signal by value close to 1 to change the level, and we cut the recording randomly, sometimes in two, to be able to analyze and without the full lines information. We designed a model based on GRU, gated recurrent unit, with 4 symmetric GRU layers successive. The objective is to make some features, to make emerge some features from easy one to more complex one. And the first GRU was to detect the probability of being, for the maternal heart rate channel, for being false or true signals. We had to make some sparsity constraints to limit the number of rates. So with the sparsity constraint, we have 8,000 rates on our models to train. We use TensorFlow to train our models. And big difficulty in this problem is that since we use GRU for long periods, for 4 hours period at 4 Hz, it was a very long computation times and it was complicated to compare models. So hopefully we could use the Google TRC program, which gives us TPU which are 10 times better than the best computer we can have, and we can use 8 at the same time. So we can train the model for months, and but it's complicated to test several models. So this is the result we produce. In blue, you can see what is estimated to be true signals. In red, what is estimated to be false signals in a color gradient. And we can see that we almost perfectly recognize all false signals, except maybe this vertical lines here, and the harmonics was not perfectly certain, but the value not well identified. Another examples on where there is a false maternal heart rate during epidural episode, and the false maternal heart rate was well recognized, and they don't disturb the recognitions of the false signals of fetal heart rate. This is another example. There is some small FHR deceleration, and there is also acceleration in maternal heart rate. And for this period, there is no maternal heart rate. So we have to interpolate where is the maternal heart rate during this period. And I don't know if the methods work like that, but we can see that the variability is not the same between the maternal heart rate and the fetal one. So maybe it's a clue that the method can use to make this recognition. At last, we see this was also a complicated one because the maternal heart rate is very close to the fetal one.
Right?
Yes, this one is real because it's almost the same pattern that we see at the beginning. We can almost say that this is acceleration synchronized with contraction, but there is not the freedoms, and the matching between the maternal heart rate and the fetal one is not perfect, so we can estimate it is probably a real signal.
Austin, do you think these are real? Sorry. Do you think these are real?
So it depends. My real problem is any clinician who is charged with looking after babies and mothers in labor should be able to recognize that accelerations in active second stage is non-physiological. That's, I think, for me, that's a starting point. And if we need to be reminded by a machine, whether baby or mom, this happens, we shouldn't be managing women. It's almost like going to a cardiologist who can read an ECG or an echo. You won't go there. So personally, I just think the technology is beautiful, but
do you think this is real maternal and real fetal? Because you're better than me at that.
well, so on the left side of the screen, I suppose the purple color is supposed to be maternal. Is that right?
Yes, that's what you mentioned.
The top end is meant to be fetal.
Yeah.
If this woman is in active second stage, it's almost inconceivable that you're going to end up with those accelerations in a baby while mom is pushing in active second stage. It just doesn't make physiologic sense. That's what makes me think it doesn't fit what I would expect of a normal real life situation.
No problem in this situation. So globally, this is the performance. We have an accuracy of 99.60% on the test dataset for routine clinical practice. We have to compare this with the percentage of crucial, since the trivial methods saying that every signals are true and this performance. But we divide the number of errors by approximately 15, so it's a really good performance. And the AUC, which is also very good, seems to be very satisfying. If we remove the maternal heart rate sensor, the performance dropped to 99% approximately. It remains satisfying, but it shows the importance to well record the maternal heart rate in CTG. And if we look between the first stage and the second stage, we can see that the second stage first have much more false signals, and also that the experts were unsure for 10% of signals, so even the experts have a lot of more difficulties to analyze the second stage of delivery. And the performance is less important in the second stage, and particularly if we remove the maternal heart rate, we have an accuracy lesser than we remove more true signals than false signals, even if AUC was still better than the one. On the dual signal test dataset, we can see the performance of the two experts and the performance of the method, and the method was between the two experts. So it fits the impression we have that the method is as good as most of experts, but if very well trained, like Antonia, experts analyze, we can do a bit better. So the great news is that all the code and all the dataset are freely available as open source. So we include this in the Fetal Heart Rate morphological analysis toolbox that we developed first for recognition of the baseline and acceleration, deceleration. So please feel free to test this. You can reproduce the method you can try to improve, and I hope you can use it as a pre-processing for every method you can do to hope remove false signals. We can create some various problems. We just this morning published this the paper as a preprint, so you can have a look at it. And before finishing, I would like to present you for our project. So there is the Fetal Heart Rate morphological analysis toolbox that we spoke earlier. We worked on acidosis detection, and we have a database of 20,000 recordings. We have made our system to have a company-free central of monitoring, so you can test on your cell phone, and you can see voice recording. And we have done a project for deep learning in France, which is called ERCF, to train the midwives and obstetrician to analyze fetal heart rate. So thank you for your attention, and I'm ready to answer the question if you have any.
Thank you so much, Samuel. Do we have some questions for him?
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I did enjoy particularly Antonia's intervention. During the recordings, were the fetuses or the fetal signal acquired by internal electrode or not?
The scalp electrode, you mean?
Yes.
Actually, we see on literature that it is possible, but there is no periods in your dataset when the scalp ECG can capture the maternal heart rate.
So the recordings, the fetal heart rate on your recordings, were they abdominal transducers or were they internal fetal scalp electrode, as you call it?
Sorry?
So the fetal heart rate that you showed, were the signals acquired via the fetal scalp electrode, or were they acquired via an abdominal transducer?
External or internal?
Yes, we have done two models. In fact, I present only the pair here because this is most interesting. But we have also made a model for the internal sensor to recognize false signals in the internal sensor. But there is very few false signals in internal, so this is a less interesting project.
But the assumption of your work is that the Doppler, you want to improve that Doppler signal, and you use the scalp as your ground truth, right?
Yes, that's right. Yes. Yeah.
So just so I understand,
But not we don't have enough dual signals datasets. There is only 100 dual signal datasets in the training session, and most of the recording are annotated using only the fetal heart rate, the Doppler signal. I'm sorry, see if I don't understand the question.
No, don't worry. Just so I understand it better, what I'm hearing is you've done two recordings from the fetus, one abdominal, one internal. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that might explain some of the
But
confusion.
not on all recording.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, for training purposes, you can come up with a nice model. In reality, you won't have the two, and the hope is that you can correct or detect the bad Doppler.
because from a clinical perspective,
if you had just the abdominal transducer from a clinical perspective, it is conceivable that the fetal heart rate would collapse. The machine completely forgets the fetus and picks up the mouth.
Yeah.
Whereas if you had an internal electrode a clinician will pick that up just like that and react. In fact, that goes back to the guideline that you showed, the Mercure guideline, saying if you had a maternal heart rate pickup in the second stage, you need to deliver the baby within 15 minutes. That's far too long. If the fetal heart rate has collapsed in 15 minutes, there would have been at least 5 minutes of approximate ischemic damage.
If internal. If internal.
Yeah.
Sorry, but if it's external, you need to question whether baby died and you're picking up maternal, or whether baby's fine and you're picking up maternal.
Well, exactly. It's very relevant for very junior practitioners, because they may look at the maternal heart rate and conclude that maybe it's just the fetus decelerating, whereas you've lost the fetus.
But it happens a lot.
Of course, it does happen, and that's where training becomes essential.
I just want to make a comment about this 15-minute delivery. This is nonsense.
Yeah.
Right? You cannot do that at a university hospital except between 9 and 3:30. You cannot do it in a community hospital or out in the bush. If you do it in a university hospital, you're going to have the least experienced clinician on the floor. They'll kill a mother by getting her to the hospital, to the OR too fast. She'll get an aspiration. They'll have a difficult delivery through the abdomen. They'll lacerate blood vessels. She's dead. So please, don't ever talk about a time to delivery when there's a sudden change in the fetal heart rate and put a number on it. I mean, they have that in the United States, and it's 30 minutes, and it's ludicrous. And the American College of OBGYN has tried to take it back, and they haven't been able to get it out of the brain of administrators and nursing administration in the hospitals. Thank you.
What do you think is a more realistic estimate of time to OR?
As soon as you can.
In other words, it depends.
We didn't put a timeline that came from the guidelines.
Digitize a lot of stuff. Digitize the time. It is too dependent on the environment, the experience of the person. Let's not start killing others.
I have a question about your results.
Yeah.
Maternal interference happens regularly, of course, but it's still by far in the minority of the tracing. So if you report accuracy, it's hard to see what you're doing and how you're improving. I'm wondering if you've looked at how often for clear dropout, let's say having a clinician say this was in fact a maternal interference, how often do you do a good job for those specific cases?
You ask if how inference of maternal heart rate is.
Well, you report highly you sample by sample in the high 90s of accuracy.
Sorry?
But you report accuracy over the entire tracing, correct?
Yes, yes.
I'm
That's
saying,
right.
how are you doing in the areas in which you're trying to fix things? In other words, when there is maternal interference, how well you do.
How we manage the maternal interference?
Yes. It won't be 90%. It will be something smaller or lower, right?
But we just reject the signals. We don't know yet how to manage, but we think it's important to alert. We have to the practitioner to really put the sensor. That's one of our objectives, and for automatic analysis, we just have to not take into account the signals.
And my last question is this meant to be real-time detection or retrospective batch detection?
For now, it's only retrospective. The computation time is very low. It's 1 second for 1 hour recordings, even without a GPU and CPU processing only 1 recording at a time. But the analysis may depend on the following of the signals. That is to say, to analyze a point here, we have to know what happens after. So if we realize in real time, there may be change of mind and depending on what happens.
And so can you use a bidirectional recurrent net in that case? Because for bidirectional, the assumption is that you know past and future samples.
So in real time, we have to analyze what to think, but what the performance are without knowing of the future. But I think we have to accept that even man can change mind, and if we have half an hour later some information that will make your opinion to change, this is something which can be acceptable, even if.
So either you say yes, you can change your mind, or you say I'm going to wait for all my decisions and delay.
But it may be problematic to not, since if it is false signal, you just have to move a little bit the sensor. If it is, if you don't detect the false signals, you have half an hour of false signals on which you don't watch the state of the fetus. So it would be better to have a direct estimation that as soon as possible, instead of waiting half an hour with no estimation, I guess.
You know, you can use an ultraconventional feed source.
So,
I think you can take, when you're not sure what feeds, right? You go back to 1958,
And you can use a fetoscope, and you can use your finger on the radial pulse of the mother to try and differentiate what it is you think you're
Are your
using.
slides on the computer?
yes, but
The world is not digital. Let's
yes.
you know, we have a digital model of the universe, all right? But a lot of this stuff is analog still.
Yes.
Hi, thanks for this great presentation. I think it's really cool. Just some questions on the generalizability of the model. Have you explored how this performs in some kind of outlier pregnancies, for example, really high BMI women or undiagnosed multiple pregnancies?
I don't have tried on multiple pregnancies. And the first,
High BMI, so big women, big mothers.
I don't look at this data. I just pick up the
But
signals.
you have it, right?
Yes,
Good.
but it's we don't. There is a lot of problem of regulation, and it's more easy to just collect the signals without looking at what.
Maybe we'll call Sam as talk to close, and thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you.